Welcome back, guys. I wanted to take a moment and share with you a couple video clips from Assassin's Creed Odyssey showing you a little bit more about Greek mythology. Now, we learned the basics that you need to know for any standardized testing. One of the cool things to keep in mind is most of you have seen movies like Percy Jackson or Clash of the Titans, and some of you have played video games like this that have depictions of Greek mythology within it. Now, this obviously is the Minotaur. King Minos had a son who was half bull, half human, and Cassandra, the main character, is going to fight him. So we don't have time to watch all of it, but you get a little taste of what this is all about. The cool thing about Greek mythology is it's verbally passed down from person to person, so the stories vary. Many of you maybe have seen depictions in movies that are different, and that's why. It's because there are different versions of these stories. So the second mythological creature in the game is Medusa. Now, she's a Gorgon, and she has several versions of her origin story and why she does what she does, but her main thing is she has snakes for hair, and she turns people into stone when they look at her. And finally, last for this video, we have the Cyclops, and there are other mythological creatures that you do quests for to find so you can battle them. But the Cyclops, everyone's pretty much heard of him, I would guess. He has one eye, but enjoy this little clip, and then we're going to get into the main content.
Stretch your mighty hands and raise me to the heavens.
All right, next up we have the social structure in ancient Greece. Remember, social is how people interact with each other. So within society, you have free and enslaved populations. How did someone become a slave? Well, three different ways. First, by conquest. They could be conquered in war. By birth. They could be born to parents who were enslaved. And also by debt. This one really freaks people out sometimes. So think of it like this. If parents had children and they couldn't pay their debts, they could literally sell their children into slavery, or they could become slaves themselves. It's a good thing we don't have anything like that today, right? So most Greek households did own slaves as either servants or laborers. They did work or took care of the house. So the next thing we get into, it's going to be several slides talking about Athens and Sparta. So Greece literally has thousands of city-states, because it's not a unified country yet. Today it is, but back then, Athens is one of the most powerful city-states. That's where democracy comes from. And Sparta is a warlike city-state. And they're all about war, and they have a different type of government. So the big thing here is that Athens and Sparta, sometimes they worked together, and sometimes they did not. Sometimes they were enemies. For example, during the Persian War, the Persians were all about destroying the city of Athens, and Athens actually asked Sparta for help. The Spartans realized that they needed to help Athens, even though they didn't really agree with them on a lot of things, but because if Athens fell, that could mean the end of all of the Greeks. So in Athens, who could actually be a citizen? Who could vote? Because they come up with democracy. So citizenship in the Greek polis, the word polis is Greek for city. So Greek cities promoted civic and commercial life. Now this is a big vocabulary word, commercial. You know, if you're watching TV and you see a commercial, or you're listening to the radio or streaming or whatever, a commercial, they're trying to convince you to buy something. So commercial life is associated with business. So who could be a citizen? That's free adult Greek males. Now I added the word Greek to help you, because later you're going to have to know the difference between citizenship in Rome and citizenship in Greece. So free adult Greek males, that answers all the possible questions they could ask you. Could a slave be a citizen? No, because they're not free. Could a child be a citizen? No, because they're not an adult. Could a foreigner be a citizen? No, because they're not Greek. Could a woman be a citizen? No, because they're not male. So all the information's right there on the screen, and all you need to know is women and foreigners had no political rights, slaves had no political rights. Again, just remember, free adult Greek males. What this all is going to come back to is next unit, when we get to Rome, you're going to have to be able to compare and contrast, because Rome has a different criteria for who could be a citizen. So when you're being tested like a CSA or a benchmark, etc., or the SOL, they're going to ask you who could be a citizen in Rome, who could be a citizen in Greece, or some variation of that question. So another important aspect of Greece and Rome that you're going to have to compare and contrast is the types of democracy, because it's different. For example, in Greece, it's a direct democracy. We'll get back into that in a minute, but how did Athens develop a democracy? So this is what's called Matt D, or Matt the Democrat, if that helps you remember it. So Athens did not start off with a democracy. Just like most other civilizations, they had a king or queen first. So that's called a monarchy. So if you look at the abbreviation MATD, or MATD, they started with the monarchy, but then what happened? The rich took over, but that led to corruption. That's called an aristocracy, the rule by land-owning elites. So they go from kings and queens to the land-owning elites, from monarchy to aristocracy. Then that leads to the rise of tyrants like Draco and Solon. Draco took over to end the corruption, and then later there's other tyrants as well, but you only need to know Draco and Solon. Solon leads the way for democracy. So democracy is where people cast their votes for either ideas or solutions. So for example, if you wanted to go to war, you would debate, you would argue. And then in the end, people vote. And if more people vote, yes, we want to go to war, that's what we do. That's not how it works here in America. We have a representative democracy. So when we get to Rome, next unit, we'll talk more about that. But you need to understand this. MATD, monarchy, aristocracy, tyranny, democracy, MATD. Here's why. They might ask you, what stage of government did they have in Athens after tyranny? So you look at the T, and it goes to the D, which is democracy. So tyranny, then democracy. Or they could ask you, what type of government in Athens did they have before aristocracy? So that would be the M, which is monarchy. Okay, next up we have a released SOL question that shows this in action. We have monarchy, aristocracy, tyranny, and democracy as the graphic at the top. So we're going to look at that, and for me, when you see the word democracy, you should think of Athens. That's where democracy started. That's a key point. So when we read the sentence, it says, the sequence describes the development of government in ancient what? Byzantium? No. Sparta? No. Rome? No. Athens. Rome is a different type of democracy, but again, MATD, M-A-T-D. So just a moment ago, we talked about Draco and Solon. These are tyrants who worked for reform or change. Reform is change. So a tyrant is somebody who takes over by force, and most of us would think of, ooh, that's bad. A tyrant is a bad person. But think of it like this. Draco takes over because the aristocrats are corrupt. So he's literally trying to help people. So he wasn't a bad tyrant. Some might be, but he wasn't. Solon, same thing. Now, I am simplifying this, but Solon is opening the door for democracy to take hold. So again, in Athens, you think about democracy. That's what you really should think of. So what are the democratic principles? What are they? So direct democracy. Instead of a representative democracy, for example, here in America, we vote for people to vote for us and to run the government for us. In Athens, they did that directly. So you might ask, what does that mean they did that directly? That means that you don't vote for a person who runs the government. You would have to show up and debate and talk about the issues and the problems, and then you would vote for the solutions yourself. Public debate is where people argue. Literally, what are the pros and cons, or why should we go to war? Those are the duties that they have, this public debate, which at the last part, we have duties of the citizen. So for example, you as a citizen, you have this right to vote. You should take advantage of it. And to be fair, even today, We have a lot of people that don't vote. They don't understand the process, or they think their vote doesn't matter. But it is your duty. It's hard to complain about something if you're not willing to go fix it by voting and getting your word in. So in ancient Athens, this is the whole key to this, is they valued this democracy. They were unique in that no one else had done this before. Now remember, one of the key points is we're contrasting Sparta. Sparta doesn't have a democracy. They have what's called an oligarchy. An oligarchy is ruled by a small group of people. So they had 2 kings and a council of elders. It was 30 total people that could actually vote, and they ran everything. In Sparta, they also had a rigid social structure. So you were born into society and you had no way of changing your standing. So for example, you either were a warrior or you were a slave. Now, their slaves were called helots, and they did all the work, while the Spartan warriors, they trained for war. They were taken from their home at 7 years old, and they were treated very harshly. But some people consider them the greatest warrior nation ever in all history. So next we have a series of Greek wars. We have the Persian War, which is the Greeks versus the Persians. To be fair, what it really was about was that Athens had made some colonies over in Asia Minor, which was controlled by the Persians, and the Persians did not like that. What you need to know is Sparta comes to the aid of Athens. So Athens and Sparta are actually working together, which was very odd. And the Persian Wars, again, united Athens and Sparta together. So after that, you have what's called the Golden Age of Pericles before we get to the Peloponnesian War. Now, Pericles is a statesman. He extended democracy. That's the main thing you need to know. So when you see the name Pericles, you think of the Golden Age. That's when democracy was at its height in Athens. The other really important thing about Pericles is after the Persian War, Athens was literally burnt to the ground twice by the Persians. So after the Persian War is over, Pericles had the city rebuilt several times, and the biggest thing that came out of that was the Parthenon. Now, if you remember last video, I showed you several views of what the Parthenon looked like back in that time and what it looks like today. So the Parthenon is also an image that you'll need to be able to identify, and we covered that kind of in our image video that was separate at the beginning as an introduction. And finally, there's what's called the Peloponnesian War. So the Persian War, Athens and Sparta are united. The Peloponnesian War, it's caused by competition for control of the Greek world. Athens and Sparta are now fighting each other. But it wasn't just those 2 city-states. They had what's called the Delian League, which is Athens and all of the people who agreed with them. And then we have the Peloponnesian League, which is Sparta and all of the other city-states that agreed with them. So ultimately, in the long term, Athens and Sparta were both weakened, and this leads to Alexander the Great's father, Philip II of Macedonia. He conquers most of Greece, not Sparta, but he does conquer pretty much everything else. And that's the downfall of democracy in terms of, for ancient Greece. So Philip, Alexander the Great's father, he's from Macedonia, which is north of the Balkan Peninsula. Now, if you remember previously when we talked about the Persian Empire, we said that it looks like the praying mantis. But what ends up happening is, after Philip II, Alexander's father, he conquers most of Greece. Alexander, his son, goes on to conquer the Persian Empire. So the praying mantis, if you look at the black area on the map, that is the area that Philip of Macedon basically conquered in Greece. And then Alexander took the rest of it. So the praying mantis gets a bigger head. So that is a possibility that you could see on any type of assessment, is the difference between the Persian Empire and Alexander the Great's empire. The only difference is Greece is not included in the Persian Empire because they did not defeat them. So you look for Greece where the black area is on the map, and if it's included, then it's Alexander's. If it's not included, then it's the Persian Empire. So that takes us to the end of part 2. In the next video, part 3, it'll be a little shorter than this one, but we're going to get into the most important part of this whole unit, which is the contributions of ancient Greece.